A 2-hour meeting of the United Nations Security Council, the 13th time the Council meets on the Ukrainian crisis, a second time this week. A traditional blame game ensued, with the US and West blaming Russia for the increased chaos and violence in eastern Ukraine, accusing Moscow of lies and militarizing the conflict. In the meantime, it was Russia that called for this session to take place, basing the urgency of the meeting on what it called a resuming of militarization against its own people by the Kiev government, citing unraveling events as criminal misadventures that could lead to even more catastrophic consequences than the violence that has already taken place. According to Russia, the spoken intentions of the coup-appointed Kiev government vowing to refrain from violence point to hypocrisy, as words stand far from deeds. This Friday at the UN, Russia called for the West to stop toying with the situation instead of telling Russia where and how to keep its own troops on its own territory. Russia again reiterated that it believes the US and EU have stood in the way of a peaceful solution to the crisis by stirring events on the ground that escalated each time a visit of a US official took place. At the Security Council, the US accused Russia of building a case for intervention, saying Kiev chooses peace while Moscow chooses seizing more territories. While Russia says the outbreak of further violence in Ukraine needs to stop and returning to the Geneva agreements is key, Ukraine's representative at the UN said events unraveling in eastern and southeastern Ukraine are aimed at tackling highly armed militants on the ground, and that the only military in the east of the country are Russian supporters. The meeting wrapped up with Russia reminding the Council that forceful change of power always leads to destabilization, and that Russia had suggested a variety of formats for dialogue throughout the crisis and would never deny the implementation of any agreements that have been reached, saying that the word lie that the West uses against Russia can also be a selective interpretation of one's own position, obviously pointing at Washington's position and participation in the way events have unraveled. The Security Council meeting wrapped up this Friday with Russia calling for the Council to agree that all of its members are interested in the halting of violence, as was recently agreed in Geneva. Anastasia Churkina, RT, New York.